Hey guys, and welcome back. Now in today's video, I thought I would do something kind of fun where I just kind of lay out what I would do personally if I were in charge of Lucasfilm. Now that means that I would have Kathleen Kennedy's job, and I know a lot of people think that maybe Kevin Feige might be taking over for Kathleen Kennedy, but we're just going to have a little fun with this video and pretend that I have this job, and I'm going to lay out everything that I would bring as far as Star Wars content if I did. Now, the first thing that I want to bring up is just recently Disney CEO Bob Iger made a statement saying that after Episode 9, the Star Wars films are going to go on a bit of a hiatus. Now, they're still doing all of the Disney Plus series that they've been planning on doing, so that means Mandalorian Season 2, Kenobi, and the Cassian Andor series, as well as a few others that they have in development. Now, as far as current Star Wars film projects, we know that the Game of Thrones creators just left their trilogy, or maybe it was axed, we don't really know for sure. We know that Rian Johnson is getting his own trilogy, and we know that Kevin Feige is producing a single movie, as of right now. And then there are untitled Star Wars films set for 2022, 2024, and 2026, and they haven't really named a director or writer or anything like that to those films. Now, Bob Iger also said less is more when it comes to Star Wars, and personally, I don't really agree with that. I just think it is quality over quantity. If there was a whole bunch of really good stuff, I wouldn't mind a ton of great Star Wars content. It just matters if it's good or not. But I digress. Now, I'm assuming that Rian Johnson's trilogy is probably going to get canceled. You guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of his, and a lot of signs seem to indicate that it's going to get canceled. I mean, he may work on something with Disney Plus. Maybe they just give him sort of a role that's not quite as big. I wouldn't really be too excited to see any movies that he makes, because The Last Jedi just was not for me. But I'm assuming his trilogy is going to get canceled. Kevin Feige's, I'm not so sure. But let's just say, if I were in charge, that Feige's movie is axed, Johnson's trilogy is axed, but let's leave the 2022, 24, and 26 trilogy to sort of fit in with the less is more thing, so we still get some movies, just not a whole lot, and let's name a new director and writer to those movies. And that person for me would have to be Sam Raimi. Now, I know he's probably not the most popular choice. A lot of people would probably rather see Christopher Nolan or Peter Jackson. But for me, I am a huge fan of Sam Raimi. To me, his range is wider than anybody else's. He can do indie stuff that burst with personality like the Evil Dead franchise that he created, or he can make blockbuster movies like the Spider-Man trilogy. He can run with themes like Peter Parker battling being himself and also carrying the burden of being Spider-Man, and he can create great action heroes like Ash Williams. He can work with horror, action, comedy, drama, and I would love to see what he could bring to Star Wars because his films just carry so much personality with them. Now, the next thing that I would do is something that Kevin Feige's already seemingly trying to do, but I would do it a little bit differently than him. He seems to be trying to get actors and actresses from the MCU over to Star Wars. Personally, I wouldn't be too huge on that. Like, I don't want to see Captain America or Black Widow in a Star Wars film because that's all I would be thinking about if I saw them. But I would love for some of the people who have worked on these films to be involved with Star Wars. In particular, I would love to see the MCU casting director, Sarah Finn, make her way over to Star Wars. In my opinion, she is probably the MVP of the entire MCU. She did such a fantastic job casting all of these amazing characters that we love so much, and she does not get nearly enough credit for it. Two other people that I would love to see make their way to Star Wars would be the set designers for the movie Black Panther, Jay Hart and Hannah Beachler. In my opinion, they did such a fantastic job. My favorite part of watching the movie Black Panther is just looking around and looking at how beautiful everything was. The sets were fantastic. And with how diverse Star Wars is, so many different planets and vibes and creatures, I think that they would do a fantastic job messing around with all of these different things. Now, as far as the content is concerned, there are two things that would take priority at the top of my list. A Knights of the Old Republic trilogy or series. I'm not really sure which would work better. It could be the Sam Raimi trilogy, but if there were more movies made besides Raimi's trilogy, I think somebody like Peter Jackson would do a fantastic job with that now that the Game of Thrones creators are out on Star Wars. And the other thing would be a post Return of the Jedi animated series created by Dave Filoni. And I think that this is significantly important because that would really shorten the gap in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, because in those 30 years, we really don't know much that happened. And I also think it would be really cool to see Luke again and doing some really cool stuff basically in his Jedi prime, because a lot of fans weren't really happy with how he was handled in The Last Jedi. So seeing him back in action and doing some really cool stuff and really wising up as a Jedi and taking this journey after his father dies would be something that I think a lot of fans would be really excited for. Not to mention, you could take a lot of things from the EU and incorporate it into this show. You'd have to make some small tweaks here and there to fit in with canon, but like if they based it off the events of the Thrawn trilogy, which are beloved by so many fans, and they made Thrawn the main villain, they could reintroduce characters like Mara Jade and Kyle Katarn back into canon, and maybe they did some stuff with some characters that are in the sequel trilogy, like maybe later on they introduce Snoke or something like that. Maybe Luke tries to reestablish the Jedi Order with like Kyle Katarn, and maybe even the Star Wars Rebels characters come into play at some point. Ezra makes a return, and Ahsoka, Kyle, Ezra, and Luke are all together sort of trying to build this Jedi Order. I think that would be really cool, and a lot of fans would love to see that. Now, besides giving Sam Raimi his own trilogy and also creating a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy, whether that was his trilogy or they were two separate things, I don't have too many more ideas for Star Wars films. However, I would love to see one spin-off film with Samuel L. Jackson returning as Mace Windu, where Mace Windu has survived the events of Order 66, and he's sort of recovering. He has a missing hand, and maybe he has to get a mechanical hand. He's probably pretty scarred from the lightning that Palpatine shot at him, and this could sort of be like him recovering from those events, and in the end, Vader has hunted him down, and him and Mace Windu have this epic duel, and that could be how Mace Windu's story ends. I would absolutely love to see that, and I think a lot of fans would pay good money to see that. Now, as far as Disney Plus series that I would have implemented if I were in charge of Lucasfilm, I would love to have a Vader series created where he's training an apprentice to possibly overthrow Emperor Palpatine, and that could be a good way to reintroduce Starkiller back into canon, or it could be somebody completely new. I also think a Solo Disney Plus series should be made. A lot of fans want to see Solo 2 happen, and I am all with them in spirit. I think there's a lot more story left to tell, but I think that story is probably more suited as a series on Disney Plus as opposed to another movie. Now, if you've liked these ideas that I'm pitching for Star Wars movies or series, go check out my video, Top 10 Potential Star Wars Projects, because it has all of these ideas that I've pitched to you so far, as well as some more on top of it that I think you guys would really dig. Now, the next thing that I would do if I were in charge of Lucasfilm would be to bring back a few specific characters in future Star Wars projects. The first person that I would try to get would be Hayden Christensen to return as Anakin. Now, you all know I'm a huge Anakin fan and really want to see him in The Rise of Skywalker, and I will be disappointed if he's not. But if he is, or if he's not, I still think it would be really cool to see him in the Kenobi series if there were flashbacks of Obi-Wan and Anakin during the Clone Wars, or potentially even a live-action Clone Wars show. Now, the next person that I would bring on board would be Mads Mikkelsen to reprise his role as Galen Erso in the Cassian Andor series. Now, just recently, they announced that the actor who plays Director Krennic will also be returning for this series, and if he's returning, I think it makes a lot of sense for Galen Erso to also come back. Not to mention, I'm also a huge fan of Mads Mikkelsen. I think he is a fantastic actor, and I absolutely loved him in the Hannibal series. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check it out. Now, I don't have a specific actress in mind for this role, but I think it would be really cool to see an animated character make their way over to live action, and I think Sabine Wren is the perfect character to do that with, and I would have her appear in the show The Mandalorian. I don't think I really need to explain myself here, but they're obviously same race, same culture, and I think it'd be really cool if in The Mandalorian it dove deeper into that culture and we got to see a live action Sabine Wren. Now, whether this would be in The Mandalorian or another show or movie around this time period, I would also have Sebastian Stan come on to play Luke. Now, it would just be a brief cameo because I don't want it to be a whole movie or a trilogy or a show, because the more that we see him, the more we're going to realize, yeah, that's not really Mark Hamill. But I think a cameo sort of similar to the one that Vader made at the end of Rogue One, where we just see him and then all of a sudden he's just throwing dudes left and right and tearing them up. I think that would be really cool to see a version of that on the light side, to see Luke do that. And I think that, paired with the post Return of the Jedi animated series, would go a long way in changing the perception of fans who didn't really like The Last Jedi and had a lot of issues with the way that they made Luke's character, so that they could really see Luke Skywalker as they loved him in the original trilogy once again. Now, as far as video games are concerned, here's what I would do. I would reinstate LucasArts. I heard that they were going to do that, but I guess maybe that's not the case. Let me know down in the comments below if you know what's for sure going on. But if that's not the case, I would reinstate LucasArts, and I would have them making Star Wars games from now on. I would have them create a game kind of like Lego Star Wars, only realistic, with like Battlefront 2 type graphics, things like that, where you play the events of the Skywalker saga. I would also have an open world or an open galaxy game where you play as Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka in the events of the Clone Wars. I think open world and open galaxy is the future of Star Wars gaming. I would also create a Jango Fett VR game. I think that'd be really cool to sort of fly around in his jetpack, dual wield with his two blasters. I think that'd be really cool. I would also keep Battlefront 2 supported for years to come and bring it to the most current platforms for PlayStation and Xbox, and hopefully over time, Battlefront 2 can be like a realistic Star Wars game where there's so many planets and maps and characters and you truly feel immersed in this incredibly diverse universe. And finally, I would re-release all of the old LucasArts games on the most current platforms for PlayStation and Xbox. Now, as far as comics are concerned, I would continue releasing Anakin and Obi-Wan comics between episodes 1 and 2 so that you can really see the progression of Kid Anakin into the Anakin that we see in episode 2. Then I would also release a line of General Grievous comics. And I know this may be an unpopular opinion, but I really feel Revenge of the Sith kind of botched General Grievous as much as I love Revenge of the Sith, and the Clone Wars did the exact same thing. If you've ever seen the Clone Wars from 2003, which isn't canon anymore, General Grievous was awesome. He was like this incredibly intimidating assassin type character, and I think that a line of comics would really do him a lot of justice. Now, some small unrelated things that I would do is I would largely expand upon Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars land at Disney World. I would create a new documentary about George Lucas and Star Wars, going from before the original trilogy through the prequel trilogy. Also, I would release an edition of A New Hope where it still has most of the modern changes and effects and things, but one scene would be changed. Can you guess which one? Yes, I'm talking about the Han shot first scene. It would go back to the original way where all you heard was a shot, saw an explosion, and Greedo died. So I guess you didn't really see if Greedo shot, but you didn't hear two blaster fires. And I think that the way that it is currently is so dumb because, for one, it does change Han's character if he waits for Greedo to shoot first and then shoots him because he realizes, okay, I'm not in the wrong for doing this because he tried to kill me. I liked that Han had instincts and he was smart and had to do what he had to do. And I think the movie Solo tried to retcon that a little bit and sort of fix Han's character, and I really admired them doing that. But also, it is just so dumb to think that an elite bounty hunter like Greedo would miss from point-blank range. And if you want to say that that dodge thing that Han does is why Greedo missed, that is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever seen. I'm sorry, it is very clearly edited, like that is not a natural motion for a body whatsoever. So I would have a new version of A New Hope with just that one scene change. Now, the last thing that I would do if I were the head of Lucasfilm, at least for the foreseeable future, is I would bring in specific actors and actresses for specific roles, or just people that I think would do really well in a role in Star Wars. The people that I could really see playing a specific character would be Zoe Saldana as Ahsoka, if there's a live-action Ahsoka, or Angelina Jolie as a live-action Ventress, if that happened. I would love to see Christian Bale as Darth Revan. I think Keanu Reeves, while he's also another option to play Darth Revan, would also really work well as Kyle Katarn, and his counterpart could be Haley Atwell as Jan Ors. Some actors and actresses I would love to see in Star Wars, really in any role, include Bruce Campbell, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Jamie Foxx, Millie Bobby Brown, Charlize Theron, and Danny Gurira. Wow, and I almost forgot the most important thing that I was going to put in this video. Everything else that I've said is so insignificant compared to this one thing. And that would be that I would give George Lucas as much creative control and as much involvement as he wants in all future Star Wars projects. There is no Star Wars without George Lucas, and I believe that he deserves to be as involved as he wants in Star Wars until the day he dies. If he wants to write and direct all future Star Wars projects, movies, and shows, so be it. Star Wars is his baby. Even though Disney owns it now, he still deserves that right, in my opinion. I hope you guys liked today's video. Let me know down in the comments below what you would do if you were in charge of Lucasfilm. If you liked the video, feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys next time.